Bacchus. Brandy is a member of Global Human Resources at Bank of America in the role of service delivery consultant for the HR Shared Services, which is human resources. She has prior experience as a recruiter and HR generalist and is a certified senior human resources professional. In addition to her day job, she serves as co-leader for the North Texas Better Money Habits Financial Education Program at Bank of America. So this is for all people. Okay, Paul is a 16-year Bank of America associate and has had roles in mortgage origination, business operations, business controls, and risk and compliance. Paul has been a volunteer financial coach for the past 10 years, presenting financial education materials to many groups of people, and is looking forward to sharing information today. So Brandy and Paul are volunteers. Essentially everyone at Hendrick is volunteers because we want to make a difference. So I will turn it over to Brandy and Paul.
Thank you. So Brandy, do you want to kick us off, or would you like me to just go ahead and get started?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you for having us out today, and we are excited about this program. You've got a wonderful program here. I think that setting these financial foundations, and I want to thank all of you for attending, because while you're in school, you're learning, you're building your career and thinking about your long-term plan. So it's wonderful that you're here to learn more about how to set up your finances. Once you graduate, you'll be out there and in the workforce and managing a household and things they don't teach you in school. So we're trying to supplement that and really kind of help set you up for success as you finish school and start your career. So thank you all for being here today. And I want to hand it over to Paul. He's going to be our main speaker today, and he's talking about budgeting. So take it away.
Thanks, Brandy. So just from some housekeeping perspectives, if you do have questions, we will allow for some questions at the end. And if you would like to send them in the chat, just so you don't forget them as you kind of have them, then we can kind of look in the chat and navigate through those questions. I want to make sure that if you have questions, that no question goes unanswered. So, it's important that as we think through this process, and as critically important as it is to your financial success, that, you're well equipped and have the tools that you need. So that being said, talking about budgeting, I refer it to as the big bad B word, and you can, kind of fill that out however you want, but it doesn't have to be. It's really what we make it. And, I would ask the simple question: if you're a carpenter and you're going to leave your home to go to your job site to do your day of work, would you leave without your toolbox? I've never had anybody answer yes. And so the question that I ask all of you is, how can you pay your bills without a budget? So really creating a mindset that this budget is really a tool to, just as you have the ability to put your finger on your wrist and use a stopwatch and check your pulse, it's really a tool for you to check, do I have the financial means to meet my current level of obligation? It'll tell you, do I need to make changes? Do I need to do something different? I think, people may have heard that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So it is by no mistake that that the stats that measure our overall public in the US, that 60% of Americans don't have the ability to weather a financial storm and don't have $1,000 in savings. We were speaking earlier about a specific rent a tire place. And, this is what I would consider a borrowing category, but I do want to briefly touch on it because it's going to be related to one of the items that we talk about in your budget is payments. There are lots of places that you will see, and they're on every corner in every city, payday loan places. rent to own places from a furniture perspective, a tire perspective, a TV perspective. And the question that I would always ask is, what is this going to cost you? Yes, you may need the money today. Yes, you may need the TV today, or you may want the TV. But that's really going to come down to your budgeting. Are you truly classifying this as a need, or is this a want? So as you think about, as we go through the document that I'm going to share and that y'all have been emailed, the goal that I have for each of you today, and if you've never heard the phrase SMART goal, I want you to write these things down. S is for specific, M is for measurable, A is for attainable, R is for realistic or relevant, and then T is for an element of time. And I'm going to ask each of you to write a SMART goal and to making an attempt to create a budget for yourself. So a simple SMART goal for your budget would be is I am going to sit down and make a budget for myself by the end of this month. So that gives you 8 days, which is not very long. But if that's too quick, you could always say by the end of February. But if you wait till the end of February, we're already 2 months into this year. So, depending on kind of where your financial state is, it may become critically important for you to look at now rather than later. But, everything is up to you and your perspective. But I would ask that you write those goals, because without writing those goals, we can all say we want to do things, but without putting pen to a paper, putting it on our mirror, putting it on our refrigerator, where we see it and we remember it, it's very hard to hold ourselves accountable. And so it's critically important that if you would like to improve your situation, that you take the forward steps to do that. So I'm trying to share my screen. I don't know why. There we go. Okay.
I might need to update permissions or something. Did you get it figured out?
I think it's all right. So
Yeah.
okay, so let me see. I'm sorry, I don't do Zoom very often. So okay, I can't see the document that I'm sharing, but I think the document that you all see is,
So right now we're only seeing your like desktop and Bank
let
of
me share
America.
okay, let me stop sharing. Let me share my entire desktop so that I think I clicked a document rather than my whole desktop.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Now that makes sense. All right, so your savings planner, depending on, and this could be meant for someone that is in high school, that maybe not working, maybe not paying for expenses. But if you are working, paying for expenses and such, I would urge you to leverage the Excel document that I sent, which I'll pull up in just a second. But what I want to say about this is it's important to prioritize your expenses and think about short-term, midterm, long-term goals. And, how do you want to categorize? And let me see. There we go. So short-term, midterm, long-term goals. So where are you at today? Where are you at this month? Where are you going to be, this quarter? Where are you going to be mid-year? Where are you going to finish this year? And think about really, what are the steps that I need to take to get where I need to go? And when I go into the other document, it's holistically really, I would like you to use short-term, midterm, long-term goals in conjunction with the budget worksheet, which you have as a PDF and you also have as an Excel file. And the important thing for you to do here is really customize this document and make it work for you. So there is no, right way to really focus on this. As long as you are categorizing and capturing all of your expenses, that is the best thing that you can do. My thoughts are, is if you intend to spend the money, document where you're spending it. And, so be very deliberate about what you're spending. I will tell you, when you go into a store, even with COVID days and things the way that they are today, even if you're ordering online, but when you go into a store, the marketing folks that have developed that plan for that store have done their due diligence, and they are working to get you to spend more than you intended. And I will tell you, the management of those locations and those retail operations, they're incentivized on how much you spend per visit. So, it was a metric that when I was in retail, that we call it sales per customer. And we were incentivized on how much we can increase our sales per customer. The focus to get you to spend money is by design. So it's not a mistake, and it is very difficult. But as you begin to plan your budget and think about, what do I need, this incrementally goes down to each category of your spending. So for instance, the largest expense that most people have is on rent or mortgage, or really your housing. And then the second most is going to be typically your transportation. So it could be your car payment, inclusive of your car insurance, of your fuel, of your maintenance, all of the things that go along with owning and driving a car, even including the once a year registration in your budget. That once a year registration expense, if you're really tracking to what you're spending, you'll calculate in that month's budget that your car renewal requires inspection and retitling for your registration. You'll capture that. That's typically $100. And if you don't have a lot of disposable income, $100 can be difficult to come up with, depending on kind of what your income levels are. And the thing I've always said is, you can rob Peter to pay Paul. Even though Paul likes to get paid, it's not a good thing. You do not want to forget things that are going to be your expenses, and you want to focus on ensuring that you can meet your obligations. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to jump to the Excel document, because that's where I want to spend the bulk of my time. Let's see. There we go. Now share again and share this document. Are you all able to see my budget document?
Yes.
Okay. Is it big enough for you to see it, or do I need to increase the size?
I would hit close on document recovery, just to see if it.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
There we go. And how about if I do 125?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. So this particular document is a little bit different than, I just got a new computer, so I'm dealing with Office and all that, and going through that painful process. So this document, really, if you think about it holistically, the top of the document is what's coming in your bank account or in your financial capability to spend. The bottom part is what's going out. So really, inflow minus outflow, and then you're going to go all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to see what you have left. So as you think about, it's important to capture all of your sources of income. You may say that you have a variable source of income, and we were talking about the service industry earlier. And for those that are servers and bartenders and et cetera, that are tipped employees, the easiest way to estimate your income is really to sit down, write down what you're making each day for the days you work, do it for a month, and then average it and say, okay, now that being said, you've got to make sure that you don't do that on a seasonally challenged month in the service industry. You've got to make sure that that from a timing perspective, once you actually, so for instance, if you sit down and say, I make $500 a week, if you average, there's 4 weeks in a month, that's 2,000 a month. There's really 4.4 weeks in a month because of 52 weeks in a year. And so you'll be a little bit more, but I would rather you undershoot than overshoot, because overestimation is going to cause you problems. And really, if your income is variable, you want to look at, does this feel right? So, if you make $100 a shift and you work 5 shifts a week, that's $500. That's roughly $2,000 a month. So you could say, now, that being said, you've got to be mindful of when things change, i.e. you take off for work, you don't get paid. So if you're going to take the weekend off to go to a concert, or you're going to go, to some kind of event, then you may lose $200 in income. And for that, unless you pick up other shifts or change your week around, you want to make sure that you allocate accordingly and reduce your budget. So, the important thing is anything that you do, please make sure that you document it. So covering all of your income and everything that's coming in, if student loans are your only source of income, then figure that out. If you're getting $12,000 a year, that's $1,000 a month. When does that come in? And how does it come in? Figure that out. And if that's your source of income, then I would document it as 1,000. Now, as you look at these expenses, this is a skeleton. This is not the end all be all of what you could spend. This is also critically important because this has two numbers. This has what you're estimating you're going to spend, which is your quote unquote budget, and then a comparison of what you actually did. So as you think about, did I do what I said I was going to do? This actually will show you. And as you're looking at all these categories, the important thing is that you're capturing that, whatever you spend. So if I'm looking at this, I'll just say for those females out there that get their hair done and, highlights, all these things, those are expensive. Your hair expense should be categorized. And I know, many women that go, once every couple months and get their hair done, and it's $150. So, you'd want to capture that expense. I'm lucky. If I really want to go to Great Clips and have a coupon, I can get my haircut for $7 plus tip. Women don't have that luxury. But that being said, I'm still going to categorize, $20 a month on my expense, because I know I'm going to go at least once a month, maybe twice. Really depends on how often I'm going. So the important thing is that you customize this document. For those of you that use Excel, you do have the ability to just right click in here and insert rows. There are formulas that will automatically calculate and include these expenses and recalculate them out of the bottom. But it's important for you to capture every single thing that you have. And I'll tell you, I've helped coworkers over the many years that I've been doing financial coaching and education. And it took us 4 months with a coworker who was having overdrafts and wanted my help to really fine tune and get to the root of her challenges. And it was really that she wasn't documenting everything she was spending. So as I looked, it really took us about 4 or 5 months of redoing her budget every single month, reconciling her budget with her credit card statements and her checking account, and really figuring out, okay, where's the money going? One of the first things that she forgot that I noticed immediately was her pet insurance. She didn't think about it, but she's got 4 dogs. They have pet insurance, and it's, not cheap. So that was an expense she left off. But the driver, and what happened is that she was showing she had quite a bit of money at the end of the month, and yet she was overdrafting. So not only was she able to not meet her savings goals, she was going negative, and which was costing her money as well from banking fees. So you want to think about, this holistically. This really is a summary of everything you're spending, and really should be a spending plan. The document that I'm showing you on the screen, what you've seen me do here is I have copied this worksheet 12 times, and I've renamed them January, February, March, for every month of the year, so that I have one document that I can keep track of every month in, and I will save this as 2022, 2023, and I always have these documents. So in the event I want to compare, well, what happened last year? I can go in here and see I can see what I said I was going to do, and I can see what I actually did. So it's critically important to tracking your expenses. I would strongly advise against spending with cash, because I have not met one person yet in my life that saves every single receipt from every single expense that they have. And I will tell you, when you break a $20 bill, it's gone. And and I'd say if you break 100, where did it go? You might be able to say, okay, well, I bought this, I paid for this, but oh, that was only $30 of that 100. Where'd the 70 go? I don't know. So the great thing about transacting either with a debit card or a credit card is you have an itemized statement of every expense that you did. And so you actually can go back and say, did I do what I said I was going to do? And, or am I, doing things that I shouldn't be doing? And as you think about your expenses, you're going to want to categorize them and think about them in things that are fixed and things that are variable. So for instance, your housing expense is going to be fixed for the most part, except once a year whenever your lease renews, and they may increase your rent because their expenses went up. But you're going to have your fixed expense, which could be your car payment, could be your auto insurance. But again, that can change once a year or every 6 months whenever your policy renews. All those things can be manipulated a little bit, but maybe not. So as I think about the 4 pillars of financial education, I think about budgeting, banking, borrowing, and credit. They all integrate, right? Because successful budgeting utilizes your banking habits to document what you're spending, and successful budgeting yields responsible borrowing, because you won't borrow more than you know that you can afford to pay for, and responsible borrowing yields you good credit. So, as you think about managing your life's expenses, trying to live without good credit is difficult. And not only is it difficult, it's expensive. So as you think about, you're driving, down the streets in your cities, and you see a payday loan place on every corner, they're in business because they're meeting a need. And they're, they're flourishing, unfortunately. And I liken them to like a great white shark, the jaws of a great white shark. Would you ever walk willingly into the jaws of a great white shark? Probably not. But that's what I look at them as. In many cases, they will charge you up to 800% interest. The way that they do that is, and is it legal? Absolutely. The way that they do it is they know that you're not going to have the money, typically, on your first payment. You go in there and say, hey, I'm not going to have the money on this payment's due. They say, okay, no problem. We'll reset it. They charge you a fee. They aggregate the interest that is already accrued, and now you owe this. So that $50 you borrowed now is 80. And then the next week or the next month rolls around, you're in a similar situation. Hey, I can't make my payment this month. And then that $80 goes to 120. Then the next month you made the payment, that 120 goes down to 100. But the next month you can't make it. And you're still, even though you've made a payment, you're still way above what you borrowed. So it's a vicious cycle that people can fall into. In as bad as I have a friend who ended up in bankruptcy because of it. And she unfortunately was doing it to pay for plane tickets to go see her dad who had cancer. So I understand why, but also understand that she was not doing financially what was necessary for her to be secure. And so when you think about, and as you, when you are working and you do have normalized expenses, i.e. maybe you've got your own place, you've bought a home, you're living with your significant other or spouse, you're purchasing a home, you've got expenses, you're tracking to your budget. One of the things that this budget will do, it's going to tell you, okay, what are my total expenses? And as you see your total expenses, it's important to know, and this is another goal that I need everyone to think about. It is, what should my emergency savings be? The reason that all of these rent-a-tire, rent-to-own furniture, rent-to-own TV, payday loan, title loan, all these places are so successful is because people have not taken the steps to sit down and say, okay, what does my emergency fund need to look like? And at a baby step, I've had lots of people tell me, oh, it should be 500 or it should be 1,000 or it should be, well, the answer is anything is better than nothing, number one. But number two, let's get tactical. So as you think about your first emergency savings goal, start with 3 months of your expenses. So if your expenses are $1,000 a month, then I can tell you with simple math that your emergency savings fund is $3,000. And you may say, oh my gosh, $3,000. I've never seen $3,000 in my account. Well, that's fine, but it doesn't mean you can't. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't either. And, something critically to think about when you do obtain that amount of money and it's sitting in your account, there are temptations. Oh, it's Super Bowl. TVs are on sale. I can get this 70-inch TV for $700 and it's half price. Should I buy it? Well, no. Your emergency fund is your emergency fund. It's meant for an emergency fund. It's meant for an emergency plane ticket if somebody in your family is ill or you need to travel for some reason on an emergency, or your tire blows out and you've got to, maybe you hit a pothole in the middle of the road and your insurance deductible is $500 and you got to replace your wheel and tire and it's $1,000 even filed on your insurance. You got to come up with that $500. So, and if you didn't have insurance that would cover that, then you got to come up with the whole $1,000. So that emergency fund is really meant to cover you in the event of an emergency. An unplanned maintenance expense on a vehicle, today's vehicles with the amount of technology that they have can be very expensive to repair. Incredibly expensive to repair. I just repaired my vehicle, which is a 2008. And even at that age, if I had gone to the dealer, it would have been a couple $1,000 repair, and it was right at $1,000 with my mechanic. But that's a big expense. And as a percent of my paycheck, even working for a bank for many, many years, that's still a lot of money. And if I didn't have that in my savings to cover it, I would have to use a credit card. I would have to go into debt to finance that or pay for that. So your emergency fund can really help you and in so many ways. And it's not really such a thing of, oh, I've got this money in savings, I can go do this. It's really meant to cover you when I'm going to say disaster strikes. And a mechanical event on a vehicle is not a disaster, but it can happen. And living in the metropolitan areas that we live in, I'm going to say all of us are probably going to be faced with some level of vehicle emergency or expense that we weren't anticipating. It just seems to happen unless you're driving a brand new car that is under the 3-year, 36,000 mile, whatever warranty. You're really somewhat exposed. But even then, driving a brand new car, unless you bought the wheel and tire warranty, that may not even be covered. You could be driving a brand new car and still have that occurrence happen and have to spend $1,000 you didn't expect. So as you run through these numbers and you populate all these numbers, you're going to see at the very bottom line, you'll see in the line row 53 that says variance, that's what you have left over. And hopefully the number is positive. If it's not positive, then we've got to go back in and look at these variable expenses and really figure out, okay, what am I doing? What can I change? You know, there's multiple options in some of your variable expenses. You know, so food can be a very big expense if we don't plan and if we don't shop accordingly. If you eat out, you could spend $20 a meal pretty quick. In a drive-through in a restaurant, you could spend $30 a meal, maybe more, you know, depending on where you're at, what you're doing. But if you're going to eat out, that needs to be a category on your budget that you will go in here and insert it and plan for it. You know, for me, I control my food expense because I put an app called Flip on my phone, and it gives me in one touch, like all of the ads at all the grocery stores. So I know I can see when all the things that the stores are around me, when they have stuff on sale, I can go and buy. I don't need to drive anywhere. I don't need to do anything. It's there. I can help reduce my variable expense. From an energy perspective, I can turn the lights off when I leave a room. I can turn the lights off when I leave the home. And I can also go to powertochoose.org and I can look for, depending on the area that you have an energy provider, whether it's Encore or whoever it is, if you're in an area that you have the ability to choose your power company and it's not a co-op, then you can really choose your electric plan as well and control that expense. So there's lots of different ways that you can control your expenses, reduce your expenses, you know, from cell phones. You know, if your cell phone has gotten too high, there's different carriers that will, you know, that offer certain rates and could potentially give you a free phone if you moved over to them. So lots of different things you can look at and lower your expenses. I know for me, I walked into a store and they actually, I asked them if they had any pre-owned phones that were refurbished. They still came with a 90-day warranty. I still had my insurance on the phone, so if something happened to it, they would replace it. And I paid $200 for that phone instead of $1,000. So lots of different ways that, you know, you can think about and reduce your expenses that ultimately will help you get to your goal in a faster fashion and actually help you save and spend less. So as you think about using this document, you also have the PDF document that if you just want to print it and you don't want to use Excel, you could do it with pen and paper. The important thing is that you're actually going through this process and that your expenses are visible to you. You know what you're spending. You can be mindful about what you're spending. And, you know, a great example that a coworker shared with me many years ago is he and his wife had set some goals together, and they personally agreed with each other that they would not spend $20, or I'm sorry, more than $20 without talking to each other first. Now, I'm talking about for incidentals. I'm not talking about grocery store, you know, like for food or for something like that. But for instance, if they went to a music store or buying movies or, you know, whatever, they would not spend a certain amount without talking to each other first. And ultimately what they did, and then on big ticket purchases, they said, okay, if we're going to buy something that costs more than $100 and we go in and see it today, we're not going to buy it today. If it's important enough that we need it, we're going to go back tomorrow. And he shared that more often than not, they never went back. So again, these marketing people are doing a great job of influencing us to purchase. You know, it's interesting. I've had conversations with friends and I have the Google app on my phone, and they say it's not listening unless you activate it, like say, hey, Google or whatever. But I guarantee you, so I just said that and it pops up, how can I help? But it's interesting because we were talking about new trucks, and all of a sudden I see pop-up ads on my phone for new trucks. So I'm like, how does that happen? And it's interesting for sure. But I'll tell you, the marketing people, they do a very, very good job of achieving their goals of getting people to buy. So is it okay to buy? Absolutely. As long as you have documented and planned your expenses. And then one line, and notice this says other. There's some things that are on this that are not on the skeleton that I would also challenge you to include. If, like in the month of December or November, if you're buying, holiday gifts for friends or loved ones, capture that, insert a row into your, and whenever you start your holiday shopping, maybe that's when you put it in your month budget. I wouldn't wait till December, the last minute, because oftentimes if you do that, you're going to end up critically short and be like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, what have I seen people do in the past? I've seen people not pay their electric bill, not pay their utilities, not pay their car payments, because they weren't going to let their child go without a holiday gift. So they elected to not pay some bills. Well, again, why do you think these payday loan places are so successful? Because people make choices that they didn't have to make. And, we all make choices, and we can all make better choices. I've made plenty of poor choices myself over my lifetime. One of the reasons I do financial education is because as a child, my idea of budget was my dad sitting down at the dining room table with a calculator that had the old adding machine tape in it, and using the bank statements and saying, we're in the red this month. Well, what I realize now that I didn't know then is they didn't budget at all. And I remember many times when my mom was upset because there were challenges with money. And I know now why. And I had to learn the hard way myself. The one thing that they did teach me is that credit is incredibly important, and you always pay your bills regardless. Like, I mean, I remember my mom saying, if you don't eat, you pay your bills. If you need food, you can come eat at my house, but you always pay your bills first. And so, I've been accustomed and very fortunate to experience low deposits when I sign up for utilities. If I need to purchase a vehicle, I can go to any dealership, and if I have done my due diligence and I know that vehicle is in the price that I want to spend and it's a good value, and I've researched it, and I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know that it fits within my budget, then I can make that decision and walk away with that vehicle. But when your credit is challenged as a result of life or opportunities where you could have made better choices, then you may not be able to walk out with the same thing, or you may pay quadruple or even 10 times the amount of interest. One of my jobs before Bank of America was in an auto finance company where we finance people at anywhere from 18 to 25% on auto loans. And when I worked through the credit department and I saw some of these credit profiles, they were bad. The score was ugly. And the result is they were paying a ton of money in interest. And as you think about how all this works together, auto loans are simple interest loans. And, all of the interest is paid first. The interest is paid first, the principal is paid last. One of the biggest mistakes people make from a borrowing perspective is they can actually fall into the trap of refinance here and save 2%. Well, did they take a step to figure out, okay, I have 20 payments left, my payment's $600 a month, and so I know that my total payoff is going to be $6,000 if I pay the remaining payments by the number of months? Or did they say, oh, I can lower my payments by $50 a month, but then they stretched out, it's $50 a month, the term is longer, and oh, I'm not paying $6,000 now, I'm paying $8,000. It's because the interest process has started over. There's a new amortization table, and it's calculating forward. So as you think about the transactions that you make, even if these things fit into your payments and makes your budget look better, do you really need that $50, or could you get that $50 somewhere else? So this is an exercise that needs to be live at all times, and living, breathing every single month, and know that we are creatures of habit, but we also change. So we can do things that are unexpected and we didn't account for. And all I'm asking is that if you do something that's different, then track it here. And if you have created one for all the months of the year, make sure you go into all of the remaining documents and change whatever you changed for each month. So the exercise that I did for myself is I customized the document first, then copied it. I used it a couple months and kind of thought I was pretty good on tracking what I needed to track, and then created it for every month once I had tweaked it and got it to where I need. And it's pretty good, but I still have to go in and add things. And so some of the things that you don't see here are, you see other, but if you're giving, if you give to charitable organizations or church or something like that, that's got to be here too. So that's part of your budget. Everything that you spend really needs to be included. So this exercise is probably the besides paying your bills on a timely basis, this is the most important thing you can do as you think about transacting and spending. I do want to spend a few minutes on the Better Money Habits website, and I'm going to bring that up and share that.
So Paul, we also want to make sure we have enough time for questions, and we only have a little over 10 minutes left.
Yes, I'm going to be.
Okay.
I want to spend 2 minutes here. Uh-oh.
Hey, Paul, while you're pulling that up, I just want to say too that you talked about the emergency fund and savings. And that's one thing that I would add to your budget in the spreadsheet is to make it treat it like a bill that you're paying to yourself. When you have, figure in, hey, I'm going to put $50, $25, $10, whatever you're trying to put into savings, automatically list that as a line item in your budget. And so you pay yourself first is what I've always been told. And I would add that in as a bill that you're paying to yourself every month and budget for it.
So on the chat, one of the students had asked, what's the best way to get out of debt without further going into debt, like a personal loan or transfer from one credit card to another? So I'm assuming this is like a credit card debt, but could you assist with that knowledge too?
Absolutely. So this is your first step. Figuring out what are all my payments. Then after you've figured out all of your payments, I would like you to take this and create a table and sort your payments from your highest payment to your lowest payment. Add from your monthly statements how much interest you're paying on each line item a month, what the rate is, because even if, so where this really needs to get down to the brass tacks is if you're in the 40th month of a 60-month auto loan, you're not paying much interest on that payment. I mean, at that point, you're paying most of it to principal. So even if that's a higher rate, I wouldn't focus on that rate. I would focus on the ratio of interest to principal of what you're paying and really look at, of the payments, see what small payments you could eliminate first by paying them off using a snowball effect, like starting out, okay, if I pay this $500 balance off with $50 extra and the minimum payment's 30, then I know that I can pay this off. So if you did 80 and what is that, roughly 6 months, 5 months? And then once you eliminate that small payment, then take what you were paying on that small payment on the next larger payment and really roll it and keep doing exactly, repeat over and over and over and over again until you get rid of it one way or another. So you've got to be careful on these low interest credit card transfers, because depending on what your rate is, most of them have a 3 or 4% transaction fee. So what does that mean? That means it's not 0%. That means it's 3 or 4%. Now, if you have something that's at 18%, then that's absolutely worthwhile. But the next question I would ask is, can you pay that balance off? So if you transferred $5,000, could you pay it off in the 12-month period by paying, so I should have used a different amount. Let's see, 6,000. Yeah, if it's $6,000 and you're paying $500 a month, you know that you'll pay it off within that 12-month period. So really be tactical and think about, how do you eliminate the debt, and be careful that you don't fall into a trap of refinancing things, and always look at the details, because the 0% is not 0%. Does that make sense?
So now another student is asking, how do you build credit? It's a good way to build credit.
So the cheapest, fastest way to build credit is to do with a secured product, either a secured installment loan or a secured credit card. So many financial institutions and credit unions will offer you a secured credit card or a secured installment loan, to where you give them $500, they give you a credit card that has a $500 line of credit. I would then charge 1 tank of gas each month, put it away, pay it off. Once you've done this enough times, and by paying it off every month, you won't accrue a dime of interest, you won't pay a thing to use that card, then they will graduate you to an unsecured card and typically increase your limit. But that is the cheapest way to really establish your credit with lesser risk. You can always ask a cosigner to add you to something and to one of their accounts, but then they run, so that does 2 things for them. They are taking some of your risk, and if they're looking to purchase something, you're diminishing their purchasing ability because that debt is on their credit. They're financially responsible for it. So the easiest way and the cheapest way is definitely going to be through a secured loan product, whether it's a revolving loan or a credit card. I'm sorry, installment loan or a credit card, which is revolving.
I think, that might be a topic that we could come back and revisit, is credit, because I think credit is mysterious to a lot of people. And in particular, a younger person starting out, it can be really confusing. And so that might be something we could come back and do another presentation and just talk about credit, if that would be an interest.
And responsible use of credit cards as part of that. Yes,
exactly. And that's where, so I always say you can do one or the other, not both. So if you're going to transact with credit, use your credit card to transact, not to spend. So that being said, instead of using your debit card, use your credit card, but when that statement comes in, pay it off in full every single month. And the risk is, if you're using both, then you're not, there's a reason in Vegas that they use plastic chips to represent $100 bills, because people are not going to throw a $100 bill down as fast as they are a plastic chip. Think about that from a credit card. it's easy to swipe that card and forget about that expense until you get that statement. It's like, oh, I forgot I spent that $100. It's very easy, but I will say this, you know, as you're beginning with transacting with credit, you can make multiple payments a month on a credit card. If you have a credit card, so for instance, with my Bank of America credit card, I can go in whenever I want and transfer money from my checking to that credit card and keep that balance at a zero. I mean, I think the only thing I could do maybe is I have a limit of once a day, but I don't ever have to let that balance grow if I don't want to. I'm only required to pay it once a month by the due date. But if I'm new to credit and it scares me, if you have a mobile banking app, you can actually go in and pay it multiple times to where you keep that payment, or say you want to do it once a week. You know, you could do 4 payments a month and keep that balance at zero and never grow a balance. And you're going to build your credit month after month after month. The other thing that I wanted to talk about that I haven't touched on yet is mobile banking apps and balances. They are deceitful because what your available balance shows has no bearing on what you have gone online and done and made ACH payments. You could have made an ACH payment that's going to post tomorrow, but your balance shows you have so much money today. So one of the biggest differences between transacting today and 20 years ago is 20 years ago, people were writing checks and using a ledger and writing down their checks and being mindful of all of their payments. Well, now we've added in all these elements of complexity. And unless you've done it with bill pay in your online banking app, then you may not see it. So be mindful that what shows available in your account balance may not be true. Because if you're running a tight month and you don't keep a lot of money in your checking account and you're running down to $20 or whatever the amount is, you could overdraft real quick. What other questions do we have in the chat?
Someone asked about emergency savings and said, would unplanned expenses be considered emergencies?
Oh, it depends. An unplanned expense is not buying a TV for a Super Bowl party. An unplanned expense is not shopping for a formal gown. In my mind, an unplanned expense is the tire blew out in my car. The transmission went out in my car. I blew a hose and had to have a tow truck, and all of these things happen. To me, it's different between choosing what we want to do and choosing what we have to do. So again, the first step before you even do your budget, I would go through your bank statement and classify each expense that you had as N or W. Was it a need or was it a want? And really figure out, okay, what do I need to be spending and where do I need to add a control for myself? I mean, it's very reasonable to say on your category, entertainment as an expense. And if you want to go out on the weekends, you want to go to the movies, you want to go to restaurants, you want to go this, plan, okay, I'm going to spend $100 a week. So $400 a month. If you're going to do it, plan for it. And if it's within your budget and it's within your financial wherewithal, it's perfectly fine. Can you all see the Better Money Habits website? Okay, so there is a module here for credit. There's a module for debt, savings, budgeting, home ownership. This is like a ribbon, like you would see in Office, that for every kind of thing that could be happening in your life. It's available in English and Spanish. Click the button here and it can move to English and Spanish. And the one of the PDF document that was the worksheet, it was a printed worksheet of the actual Excel budget worksheet that I did for you. But if you're interested in working on debt, some of the things that I talked about you will see in the debt module. Credit, same thing. Credit scores, there's lots of tips here and there's lots of ways for you to strategize, but I would say this, your budget, whatever's left over at the end of the month is what you have the ability to save. And if you have put in there, like if you made a statement, I want to save $50 a month, if you're negative 30, then I know that you can only save 20. So I would ask you, what expenses can you change so that you could achieve that $50 savings goal? It is important to, and Brandy, thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's important to not only pay yourself first, that's the first line expense for me, because I feel like it's critically important to save for my future. What other questions do we have?
If you guys want to unmute to ask questions, feel free to.
But I will tell you, I could easily spend an hour on credit.
There was another question online about, do you have any recommendations for apps to track your budget versus writing it down?
So Mint is a good app if you like the way it's laid out. And the thing I would always be careful with apps is the vulnerability aspect of it. And know that some of these companies that create the apps don't have the security like that, for instance, Bank of America would have in our mobile banking app. So you could be exposing yourself to a situation that may not be so friendly, depending on the app that you download. There could be malware there could be things there. So be very careful with installing apps. Look at the ratings, look at the comments and the reviews before you install an app like that on your phone and give access to different things. So just be mindful of information security at all times.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of times your banking, I know Bank of America's, our online application has, our online banking has a budgeting section that is really robust that can help you with those things. So I think if you don't have to bank with Bank of America, other banks have similar, and to Paul's point, that are going to be more secure. If you're banking with a organization that is reputable, and often it might be that if you have a bank account already somewhere, Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, a big bank, it might be there and you don't even know it. So if you go log into your online banking and look into it a little bit further, because you already may have that available to you. And if it's, if you're using a debit card, it depends on your strategy. Like Paul mentioned too, if you use a credit card that you are kind of charging all your expenses too, and you pay it off every month, don't let it go to interest. A lot of times there's budgeting information there and spending information there with your credit card if it's with a major company. So you may already have it and not even know it. Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Your credit card companies will typically categorize your expenses. And I know one of mine gives me a year-end summary every year, and it's not something I like to look at usually.
Well, thank you guys so much. It's 12:02, so I just wanted to be considerate of your time. Let's see here. Diane or John, did y'all have any final
No, I
comments?
appreciate that information. We did have one late question if we want to cover.
Sorry.
That's okay. It says, can you repeat your advice on seasonal expenses such as holiday shopping? How can you plan budget?
So I'm going to make this real simple. If you plan to buy it or you plan to spend it, categorize it in the month that it happens. So if your friend or family is, if you're celebrating a birthday and you're buying a birthday gift, put it in the month or put it in the month before it happens so that you see it. If it's a holiday expense and it's in December, if you start your shopping in July like I do, then categorize it in July. Categorize it whenever you plan to incur. Think about this from an accounting perspective. Whenever you plan to incur the expense, put that in that month's budget. And maybe you think twice about how much you spend, because when you look at your budget and you see what you have available, consider how much you're spending and always look for ways to and people laugh at me, but I'll tell you, I won't buy anything from Macy's unless it's on sale. So I know multiple times a year they do friends and family sales where they have 30% off. Like I may buy Ralph Lauren jeans and they're expensive, but I can buy them when they put them on sale for 30% off and they're not so bad. That is the only way that I will make that purchase. So as you think about buying gifts, as you think about, use every kind of tool that you can to lower that expense. Like I've even purchased brand new things on eBay that were gifts. And that I paid less than half price. So, but again, read the reviews, do everything with caution, but I'm always looking for a way to lower an expense.
Yeah.
And-
I think too, I'll say I have 4 savings accounts, which sounds very excessive, but I have savings accounts for specific things. Now I work at the bank and I'm really lucky. I get those accounts for free. So I don't incur any expense for that because I work at Bank of America. So you look into it. You don't want to pay any fees for that sort of thing, but you could have a savings account and have certain amounts allocated out in that savings account, but I don't touch those savings. They're for certain items. I have them labeled and they're for certain things. And I have money that goes in every month. I have it taken from my checking directly into those accounts. And you could do that for a holiday savings. I do that. One that is Christmas. I'd love to buy things for my family and I spend a chunk of money at Christmas, but I plan for it throughout the year and I save for it all year. And then when it gets close to that time of year, I know what I have in that account and that's what I have to spend for that holiday. So, you could do a separate savings or allocate funds. I recommend having a savings in addition to a checking because it's encouraging to see that number go up. It makes you feel good when you see that savings account. So I have one that's emergency. I have one that is for college savings for my kids. I have one for the holidays and I have one for vacations. Those are my 4 savings accounts that I have. And I like to see those balances grow. But that's my approach, is to keep it separate and it works for me.
And
Great. Well, Brandy and Paul, we really thank you for your time. This has been helpful and we'll look at maybe doing a credit one in the future for you guys. So you can look at how to build that credit and utilize the cards most responsibly.
Yeah, and I would definitely encourage you to go to that Better Money Habits site. There's some really great videos. Khan Academy has helped us with our video. And that resource is available to you 24/7 and would highly encourage you to go there and check it out.
Thanks. So for those of you on the call, I've given you participation credit, so you don't need to worry about that for a workshop. And I hope that you learned some stuff today.
thank you.
Very
Thank
nice.
you, Paul. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Everyone
Thanks,
have
you
a good
guys.
day.
We so appreciate it very much.
Very well.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.